All right, Shalom. It's the He Pray channel. My name is Azim Wath. But first and foremost, I want to say call Halagim, Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Harakach. Double honors to the apostles and elders, 7:13:19. Where I learned this truth from, and who rule well. Salutations to the Backyard, the elect, the 144,000. That's 12,000 men from each of the 12 tribes of Israel. The 12 tribes of Israel consist of you so-called blacks, Latinos, and indigenous of America. The 144,000 being the governing body within the one-third. The rest of the one-third comprises of elect men, women, and children. Shalom to those Israelites scattered throughout the four corners of the earth due to the diaspora and also the triangular trade. So our people come looking like different ethnicities, having various complexions. So it's not a black thing. We're not the black Hebrew Israelites. We're just Hebrew Israelites. Shalom to those that died in this truth. It says the dead should be raised up first. Those that will be accompanying Yahweh Shah on his return, including our King, King Mashah, who is King David. As always, it's an honor and privilege, honor and blessing to continue to do this work. The water Yahweh Ba'ashim Yahweh Shah for answering my prayers and permitting me to do such. Baba Kashal Yahweh Ba'ashim Yahweh Shah allowed us to be an edifying lesson to at least one member of the elect. It's going to be another co-pilot video that's inspired by this news article from reclaimthenet.org, which it says Alaska plots AI-driven digital identity payments and biometric data system. The state's new system could turn bureaucracy into automation and consent into a checkbox no one really controls. It says Alaska is advancing plans for a far-reaching redesign of its My Alaska digital identity system, one that will weave in agentic artificial intelligence and digital payment functions into a unified platform capable of acting on behalf of residents. A request for information issued by the Department of Administration's Office of Information Technology describes a system where AI software could automatically handle government transactions, submit applications, and manage personal data, provided the user has granted consent. It says what once functioned as a simple login for applying to the permanent fund dividend or signing state forms could soon evolve into a centralized mechanism managing identity, services, and money flows under one digital roof. The plan imagines AI modules that can read documents, fill out forms, verify eligibility, and even initiate tokenized payments. That would mean large portions of personal interaction with government agencies could occur through a machine acting as a proxy for the citizen. While the proposal emphasizes efficiency, it also suggests a major change in how the state and its contractors might handle sensitive data. The RFI describes an ambitious technical vision, but provides a limited public explanation of how deeply such agentic AI systems could access, process, or store personal information once integrated with legacy databases. Even with explicit content requirements, the architecture could concentrate extraordinarily amounts of behavioral and biometric data within a single government-managed platform. Security standards are invoked throughout the RFI, including compliance with NIST controls, detailed audit trails, adversarial testing, explainability tools, and human override features. Yet those guardrails heavily on depend heavily on policy enforcement and oversight mechanisms that remain undefined. The inclusion of biometric authentication, such as facial and fingerprint verification, introduces another layer of sensitive data collection, one that historically has proven difficult to keep insulated from breaches and misuse. A later phase of the program extends the system into digital payments, and verifiable credentials, including mobile driver's licenses, professional certificates, hunting and fishing permits, and tokenized prepaid balances. Those functions will be based on W3C verifiable credentials and ISO 18013-5, the same standard shaping national mobile ID programs. This alignment suggests Alaska's move is not isolated but part of a broader U.S. trend toward interoperable digital identity frameworks. Observers concerned with privacy warn that such systems could evolve into a permanent cross-agency tracking infrastructure, which they got something called Genesis. Look that up. It says the state's document also calls for voice navigation, multi-language interfaces, and a new user experience designed to cover as many as 300 separate government services in one app. Framed as modernization, the initiative nonetheless highlights an unresolved question: who truly controls a citizen's digital identity once government and AI systems mediate nearly every transaction? Once deployed, an AI that can act on behalf of a person also becomes capable of learning their patterns, predicting their needs, and operating continuously within government databases. Once Alaska's system moves forward, it will join a growing roster of governments weaving digital ID into the core of civic and online life. Across Europe, Canada, and Australia, digital identity frameworks are increasingly framed as gateways to public and private services, while emerging proposals in the United States hint at a future where identity verification might become routine for accessing even basic online platforms. These projects often promise efficiency, but their cumulative effect is to normalize constant identification, replacing the open pseudo, pseudo, pseudonymous, I think you said. I ain't pronounced this word in a minute.
Pseudonymous.
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 Okay. Pseudonymous nature of the early internet, with the model where every interaction begins with proving who you are, right? It says the argument for security is persuasive to policymakers, yet it leaves unresolved how citizens can meaningfully opt out. Once digital identity becomes a default mechanism for accessing financial systems, healthcare, or even social media, consent risks turning into a formality rather than a choice. The result could be a tiered digital environment, one for the verified and another for those excluded, whether by principle or circumstance. That change raises not only data protection concerns, but also fundamental questions about freedom of expression and association online and elsewhere. Linking AI-driven automation to identity infrastructure magnifies these risks. A system that can act on behalf of a person is also capable of observing and predicting their decisions. When that capacity exists inside government networks, the boundary between service provision and behavioral monitoring becomes precariously thin. Even with audit logs and human override functions, once such systems are embedded, reversing or limiting their reach is exceedingly difficult. So basically, you have to acknowledge what the apostles and elders of Great Millstone have been saying over these years is the truth and actually coming to pass, which, coincides with wait for it, though it tarry, it shall surely come, you know, which this patient period has produced scoffers, you know, pursuing back to Second Peter's, the third chapter, you know, verse 3, it says, knowing this first, that there shall come in the last days scoffers, walking after their own lust, and saying, where is the promise of his coming? Right? So that's what they've been saying, because why? It's all through gradualism, you know, and even with, prophecy, the Most High does everything in measure, right? So he's not going to do one particular thing all of a sudden, all at once. The Most High has set up a time period for there to be a warning, right? Gradualism, now a gradual method of action. 1832, in abolitionist literature as a disparaging term, but it means a gradual method of action. So they had these things planned out, sometimes for centuries. If you are familiar with Albert Pike, you know, going back to AI, it says prophetic archetype overlay, AI powered digital ID as a modern Babel pattern system, because that's what Esau, the so called white man, is trying to do. He's trying to reestablish a one world order scenario, in which he is the God of the world, knowing all things, and he's trying to incorporate his technology, which goes back to his miracles, right? It says the archetype, the gate of entry system. Every empire is in scripture builds a gate system, a centralized mechanism that verifies identity, right? And that's the reason why you have walls, you have gates, and you have towers, when you think about a kingdom. And not everybody is going to be or have access to the kingdom. They have to pass through the gate, So this is the same concept that is being used by Esau's New World Order, right? It says verifies identity, regulates access, controls movement, mediates transactions, defines who is in and who is out. It says in Genesis, Babel is not just a tower, it is a unified identity, language, access system. In Daniel, Babylon uses state assigned names, state controlled education, and state regulated worship, right? In Revelation, the beast system is defined by identity plus commerce plus compliance. The Alaskan Digital ID Initiative mirrors this archetype, i.e., verified identity, biometric consolidation, tokenized payments, W3C verifiable credentials. a agentic AI acting on behalf of the citizen. This is not the prophecy fulfilled. This is the pattern reemerging, the architecture, not the final form. Let's see. So going to Genesis chapter 11, give you a little insight of what was going on. It says universal language, Babel, confusion. Genesis chapter 11, verse 1, and the whole earth was of one language, you know, or language also could mean tongue, right? And of one speech. And it came to pass as they journeyed from the east that they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there. And they said one to another, go to, let us make brick and burn them thoroughly. And Esau, he actually tested all these things out, and it came to be true. And they had brick for stone, and slime had they for mortar, which is also could mean the setup of their system, you know, because it also says in the scriptures about how certain individuals use untempered mortar. You know, that represents pretty much their foundational system, their beliefs, you know, being false and not holding up. But continuing, it says, and they said, go to, let us build us a city and a tower whose top may reach onto heaven, and let us make us a name, lest we be scattered abroad upon the face of the whole earth. And Yahweh came down to see the city, which really, more than likely, it was Yahweh's side. But let's see in the interlinear. Okay, it says Yahweh's name. So it says, and Yahweh came down to see the city and the tower which the children of men builded. And Yahweh said, behold, the people is one, and they have all one language, and this they begin to do. And now nothing will be restrained from them, which they have imagined to do. Go to, let us go down, and there confound their language, that they may not understand one another's speech. You know, and this is how you got these different languages of the world, man. Because the Most High, he's not about integration. He's about segregation. He's about separating the nations. Because, you know, every nation has their own spirit. It's almost like similar to the last Airbender, man. When you go into that movie, you know, there was different tribes that had different spirits, different gifts, you know. And then you had the Airbender that ruled them all. And that's symbolic of Yasha Allah. He is Prince of the Power, the Israelites. It says, so Yahweh scattered them abroad from thence upon the face of all the earth, and they left off to build the city. Therefore is the name of it called Babel, which means confusion in the Hebrew, because of Yahweh did there confound the language of all the earth, and from thence did Yahweh scatter them abroad upon the face of the earth. And that's exactly what Yahweh Ba'ashim Yahushua is about to do to America, man. Let's see if I can find this precept real quick. That's not what it's a good verse, but it's the verse that I was thinking of, but it wasn't. It didn't have the land of confusion in it. So go back to AI. It says summary: all people have one language and one system. The Most High scattered them. A unified identity language access system is always the first step toward empire level control. Digital ID equals modern Babel pattern. So let's go back up to 2. The core symbol, the single point of truth. In prophetic systems, the danger is never the technology, it is the centralization of truth. Scriptural pattern. Egypt, centralized grain plus centralized identity. Babylon, centralized worship plus centralized decree. Rome, centralized citizenship plus centralized taxation. Revelation, centralized the chip plus centralized buying and selling. Alaska system mirrors the pattern. The article describes a single digital identity verified by AI, linked to payments, linked to government services, linked to biometrics, linked to credentials, managed by agentic AI. This creates a single point of truth about the citizen. In prophetic archetypes, a single point of truth always becomes a single point of control. So let's go back down. So it's an example that it gave in Daniel chapter 1, verse 6 and 7. It says, now among these were of the children of Judah, Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, unto whom, which these are Hebrew names, right? Unto whom the prince of the eunuchs gave names, for he gave unto Daniel the name of Belteshazzar, and Salaki if I mispronounce any of these names. It says, into Hananiah of Shadrach, into Mishael of Meshach, into Azariah of Abednego. So it says Babylon renamed Daniel and the others, assigning state-controlled identities. GMS interpretation, renaming equals reclassification, digital ID equals state, verified identity replacing natural identity. So going to point 3, the prophetic mechanic, the merchants of the earth. Revelation repeatedly highlights a pattern or a partnership between state power, merchant power, and technological power. The Alaska system is not just government run, it is built on W3C standards, tokenized payment rails, AI identity verification vendors, private sector digital credentials, and providers. This is the state merchant fusion pattern, a hallmark of every prophetic empire. So for 3, gives us Daniel 3 and 4 through 6. This is Daniel chapter 3, verse 4. It says, then a herald cried aloud, to you it is commanded, O people, nations, and languages. Let's see real quick. If think it means what I think it means. This is the word herald.
Strong's H 3744. Karoz. Karoz.
Which is let's see, what is a herald? I think it's like a almost like a speaker of a house or something. Okay, a herald. It says herald noun. This is from Etna Online. Messenger or envoy. Also could be commander of an army. You know, so going back to Daniel chapter 3, verse 4, it says, and then a herald cried aloud, to you it is commanded, O people, nations, and languages, that at what time ye hear the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, dulcimer, and all kinds of music, ye fall down and worship the golden image that Nebuchadnezzar the king has set up. And whoso falleth not down and worship shall the same hour be cast into the midst of a burning fiery furnace. Therefore, at that time, when all the people heard the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, and all kinds of music, all the people, the nations, and the languages fell down and worshiped the golden image that Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up. You know, which that passage being summarized, it says a decree required all to comply with a state mandated system or face punishment. GMS interpretation, every empire builds a compliance mechanism tied to identity and loyalty. Digital ID systems create the infrastructure for enforced conformity. And I'm going to end it on point 4, because I don't want to make this video too long, so I'll make a part 2 if it be Yahweh Bashim Shah's will. Part 4 says the symbolic function, the image that speaks. In prophetic language, an image that speaks is not a statue. It is a system that responds, a mechanism that evaluates, verifies, grants, denies, enforces. The article describes agentic AI acting on behalf of the citizen, making decisions, performing actions, verifying identity, initiating transactions. This is the first time in history where an image, a digital representation of a person, can act. This is the archetype of the image that speaks, not the prophecy, but the mechanism, which, that image is, of course, a system, which is going back to the Greco-Roman system, too. So it gives Revelation chapter 13. Verse 16, it says, and he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, which that mark goes back to the C-hip. And then they also have brain interfaces for your forehead. So when you look up that word mark in the Greek, because, most of the New Testament is written in the Greek.
Strong's G 5480. Charagma. Charagma.
So charagma goes into, I like to use the Strong's definition, which is a scratch or etching. When you scratch, when you etch something, you dig into it, you puncture it. Hence, when you use a needle, they're only supposed to be only used one time and one time only, because the tip will bend once it punctures through your epidermal layer, right? So therefore, that point is tied to a needle, and that's the injection mechanism, right? This goes back to
Strong's G
Kulaks,
5482. Kharaks.
or Karaks,
Kharaks.
which goes into a pale or stake, a palisade, which is describing the needle, the actual needle, which injects the chip, and on that chip, all your information is going to be on it, which goes into grapho,
Strong's G 1125. Grapho. Grapho.
right? The KJV translates Strong's G 1125 in the following manner: writing, describe, right? Which those chips are what you you input information into them, and they become filled with writing. That information is your ID number, your bank account, your driver's license, your medical records, so on and so forth. So finishing up, Revelation chapter 13, verse 16. It says, "And that no man might buy or sell save he that hath the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name." So you're not going to be able to function in this new world order without those things, which it summarizes. It says, "No buying or selling without the mark," which the mark is the chip. GMS interpretation: the prophecy is about identity plus commerce plus compliance. Digital ID plus tokenized payments equals the architecture of the pattern. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and end it right here. And y'all shall rock this out. I'll do part 2, because it's going to go all the way to about 20 scriptures. So with that, I hope at least one brother of the elect was edified. And I'm going to say shalom.